Okay. Okay. So, all right. So one of the first thing I wanted to cover today is the updates on the Kubernetes project. So I am done recording it, and I've pretty much, for the most part, I'm done editing it. I'm just kind of like organizing all the reference files that I want to show you guys. And um, I'm just organizing all the reference files that I want to show you guys. So that way, everything will be organized when you guys start taking it. Just to show you what the reference architecture looks like for the Kubernetes project, it will be here. And well, I'll show you that first. So this is the reference architecture for the Kubernetes project. And pretty much everything in this reference architecture, we will build everything out, including our EKS cluster. You guys remember what I told you guys, that one of the reasons why it is important to take one of the reasons why it is important to follow the projects in your account is that when we start with like the static website, for example, we'll be building our VPC, setting up route tables and things like that. Once you've learned that part in that project, you are pretty much doing the same thing for the rest of the project. So what I'm trying to say is most of the time you would only have to learn a concept one time. And once you learn it that one time, you can apply it to other projects that you complete. You guys can see in this reference architecture, everything in it are things we've used in the previous project we've completed. For those of you that have completed your project up to the Docker project, you will see that everything in here are pretty much services we've used before. The only new thing is instead of having ECS here or EC2, now we have EKS cluster. So basically what I'm trying to say is things you have to learn. For those of you that are starting out, don't look at everything you have to do as a whole. Someone sent me an email the other day and said, I am overwhelmed with all the things I have to learn. I have to learn, do I have to learn Terraform? Do I have to learn Docker? Do I have to learn CI/CD? It's overwhelming. And I said, have you started anything? He said, no. When you are starting out, don't look at all the things you have to learn as one picture. Take it one project at a time, one concept at a time. And I guarantee you, a lot of all the projects as a whole, there is about 50 to 60, maybe like 70% of the things you will do in each project is relatable or translates to the other project. So this is an example. Once you've learned your VPC, you've learned how to create EC2 instance connect endpoint, you know how to launch RDS instance, you know how to create an S3 bucket, register a certificate in certificate manager, create an IAM, create an IAM user, create an IAM role. Like literally there's nothing in here you haven't done in your previous project. The only part now is you just learn, okay, how does EKS works with, how does EKS work and how do I incorporate it into the current project that I'm working on. So when I was working on this project, that was what I did. A lot of a big part of what I did is I already knew most of the things I need to do. So I was just learning things that was relating to EKS. So this is the project. I would release it. I'm shooting for by the end of January. Sorry, I'm reading someone's question. Thank you, Ahmed. So part of what I'm adding, Ahmed said he likes the reference architecture. I will release the Kubernetes project by end of January, maybe beginning of February. So you guys should take note on that. And part of the reason I also mentioned that I'm updating all the courses in your account to fit whatever AWS, whatever is in your console. So AWS is always updating the console. Maybe some things has changed, some process has changed. Prior to this, we usually use Keeper and Keeper, SSH keepers to connect into our EC2 instance. Now we are using EC2 instance connect endpoint. We had a process for connecting to EC2 that are in the public and private subnets before. Now we use the EC2 instance connect endpoint, and that just allows us to connect into any resources in our public and private subnets. So I'm updating the course to fit all those things. So in the reference architecture, the new ones you guys are going to see when the courses are updated, I've kind of add this animation to it to just show you how traffic is flowing in your, pretty much in your network. So here we know when we deploy our applications, these are the people that will be accessing our application. And when they access our application, they're accessing it on either port 80 or port 443. I mean, we make sure it is encrypted to always be on 443, but they can try to access it on 80. And even if they do, it will redirect it to 443. So this is just showing you that the traffic is coming from here, coming from the end users, going through the load balancer to our servers, and the servers is responding back with the traffic to the end user. So whatever they requested is being granted back to them. So that's why you see on this part, the traffic is going in both directions. Here, our server needs to have access to the database. So that's what this is doing. And here we as the admin is using the EC2 instance connect endpoint to connect into our VPC. And from there, we can connect to any resources in our VPC. So it's just a simple addition to help you guys out in understanding it. And one thing I also want you guys to think about is when you are looking at the reference architecture, you can also answer the question, when this traffic is coming from here to the server, what port is that traffic working on? And when the traffic is going from here to the database, what port is that working on? And the same thing for here. So just simple things to help you guys out and also to challenge you to think about it. So that's the update for the Kubernetes project. Does anyone have any question?
Yes, I
sir.
have a question. I remember last week we talked about the Terraform, so like the IAM, how you created the IAM policy document and all this stuff. I was wondering if you had it on your notes to teach us today.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that is that.
Sorry, I forgot to also add that I really like this architecture. This is a whole game changer because quite recently I've been seeing people having this little anime on the architecture and kind of wonder how they do this. Were you able to do it with the draw.io? How did you go about this architecture, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I didn't do it draw.io. I created the reference architecture and I have a guy that edits my video, so he did it for me.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't think draw.io has the capability. Well, it don't have the capabilities to do this. Maybe in the future it will, but I just requested with a guy that knows about video animation, so he did it for me.
He actually does. I've used Grow.io to do something like this before.
Oh, it does? Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll go check it out. Does it work I mean, is it like very
It might not
effective?
be. It might. I know
It does
it
not.
shows the direction of the like the data that you have it here. Sorry, not
Mhm.
maybe not data, like the connections.
Mhm.
But I don't know if it's like as colorful as this. I'm just gonna try and see if I can get one up quickly and see how it
Okay.
looks.
Okay. I also tried that after I tried that sometime today to see how well it works. But I tried it out. I didn't even realize that it has the capabilities to do that. Okay. So that was the first thing I wanted to cover. The second thing is you guys don't forget that for all the projects in your account, you have an assignment. Well, not all the projects now, because I still have some to put there. But at least for the beginner project, the static one, the static application, the dynamic application, Docker, Terraform, we have the assignment in your account. So make sure that for when you complete those projects, you also work on the assignment. And you guys don't forget to just play around with Jira. This is optional. It's just something I created just to show you guys the process. So that way you are familiar with how to work with Jira or a sprint board. This is exactly what it's going to look like when you start working. Companies might have different tools they use for their sprint board, but the concept is the same. So here, when you are working on your assignment, try to create a ticket for it. And even if I don't approve it on time, as long as you have provided all the necessary acceptance criteria, just try to get in the habit of creating your ticket, writing the details in it, and moving it from one column to the other, just to understand the process. That would help you. And also, the Excel sheet is just for you to track your work. So once you have worked on one assignment and you have completed it, you can give yourself credit for it and move on to the next one. So all these things are just meant to kind of keep you motivated and also hold you accountable to work on the assignment in the order that you should work on them. Okay. Does anyone have any question before I move on to the demo that I made requested?
Okay, just a quick one. I noticed that during in the Terraform studies, we had one that was just plain, I would say plain. Then the range zone project was normal, but the second one had to do with Terraform modules. What was the difference between that project and this one? Because I see that I just started it, then I've not finished the Terraform module project. So yeah, I'm just looking, what's the difference between the normal Terraform and the one with module?
Okay. So let me see if I have my code here. Okay, I'll open this one. Okay, so the difference between Terraform module and the normal one you completed is in the first project you completed. That's not it. Let me see if I have one here. Okay, so In the first project you completed, you had one root directory. So by root, we mean one folder, right? And in that folder, you created all your files for all the resources you wanted to deploy.
Yeah.
So here we have all the resources like EC2, S3, and so on. So this means that when we run Terraform apply, Terraform always looks in this directory for all the references and things you have specified in your file, and it will look in here for them. So that is this project. So that is the first one. But another method that most companies use, which is what you will see the most at work, is using Terraform module. And that just means that we have one ECS project now. We have the rent zone project. Let's take the rent zone project, and we've created all of our resources for the VPC, EC2, S3, and so on. Let's say we have 10 more other projects that we need to deploy that requires the same type of resources as the rent zone.
Okay.
We are not going at work. This is what companies do. At work, they are not going to create another folder. Let's say we have another folder that is called Jupyter. They are not going to create another folder called Jupyter and create all these VPC S3 in it again. Okay. And if they have hundreds of applications, they're not just going to keep repeating that. So what they would rather do is create Terraform module. And what all Terraform module does is it allows you to be able to reuse your code. So if you look here in this Terraform modules one, this is just my project and I'm showing you an example. So in that Terraform project, you have a directory where I showed you how to create the directory. And in this directory, we have created a folder for all the resources we would need. So here we have a folder for VPC, and we have created some code in there to create a VPC, S3, and so on, right? So for all the 10 different applications we want to create, all we have to do is create one file, right? And that file will have the configuration for example, let's say this project is for rent zone. We'll create this main.tf file, and in it, we said, okay, we need to create a VPC. So we will just specify the VPC module. And the most important thing about this module is that here where we have the source, this is how we tell it where to go find the code for the VPC. So here, when we specify the source here is referencing GitHub. So it's just telling it the code is in our GitHub account, go find the VPC here. Then when we create the VPC, we want to create a NAT gateway, we do the same thing, specify a module code. Then when we want to create security group, we do the same thing. So if we have to create hundreds of applications, we just need to create a file that looks like this for each one of those applications, as opposed to creating all of this for hundreds of applications. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. It does. So that's the difference between Terraform module and the first one we did. Okay. Terraform modules allows you to reuse your code over and over and over again. Okay. So with Terraform module, you only have to write your VPC code once, and you can use it as many times to deploy many VPCs that you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So the reason why I'm showing you the different method is because I don't want to just start you out at Terraform module. When I learned Terraform, I learned it the first way we did it, which is putting everything in one directory. Then just to familiarize myself with how to create Terraform code for resources and things like that. Then once I understand that, then that was when I worked on the Terraform module code. So both will be needed for your job.
Okay.
Aziz, I have an additional question to that.
Yeah, sure.
Just to make sure I understand very clearly. So if we need to add additional resources, we go back to the module and create that resources and call it in the main.tf, right?
Correct. Exactly.
Okay. So, and if we have to deploy, like you said, 10 applications, we can just use the same main.tf. We just need to just manipulate the code, right?
Exactly. So if I
Okay.
need to, let's say I need to create another application, and that application need all the resources that my rent zone application here needs,
Mhm.
right? All I have to do is just copy this main.tf into that projects folder, right? And just
Okay.
manipulate, like you said, the source will be the same. But the
Yes.
only thing you will have to manipulate in here is if you come in here, that's why we are using the TF vars. So in the TF vars, if there's any value, obviously the project name will be different. So you just change the project name. If the environment is different, you change the environment name. And once you modify this TF vars, it would pretty much create your infrastructure. So it's once you understand it, you can work with creating resources much faster. So yes, to answer your question, yes, when we need to create another resource, we can literally copy this project folder, copy it, rename it, and just update our TF-vars file. And if there's any resources that project don't need, we can remove it from here.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think Ahmed has a question.
Yes,
Okay.
So in the CI/CD pipeline project, I think I was watching the video yesterday, but I haven't started completely. I noticed most of our Terraform AWS resources were created together with the CI/CD pipeline, GitHub Actions, workflow, directory, and all that. So can we say, since we already had our models created in the GitHub, instead of having those AWS resources in the same directory, not necessarily the same directory, can we just make reference to our models that are already in the GitHub when doing the CI/CD pipeline project?
You can use either the method that I've specified. So if you in your CI/CD, if you want Terraform to apply your code, you can just use what this configuration will look like for the module, right? Do you understand that part?
Got you. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is all you will need in your CI/CD. And when your CI/CD runs, it would call the sources that are listed under the modules here. And the same thing will still apply. But when I was creating that project, I didn't want to overwhelm you guys with CI/CD is new. So I always try to keep everything very simple and basic. CI/CD is new to you. That is where I want most of your focus to be on. So I didn't want you to have to troubleshoot referencing your source and all that stuff. That's why I just created all the Terraform project in the same directory. So that way your attention is only focusing on the CI/CD part. Once you've deployed that way, if you want to go a step further and say, okay, you know what, I want to deploy it again, but this time I want to use the Terraform module process instead of using the process of having all my codes in the same directory, then you can do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to be sure if that could be done.
Yeah, you can. You can.
Yeah.
But the only thing I can think of now is, yes, it can. And I'm trying to think of if your GitHub Actions would need access to the repo where your source is. I can't really think of it. So a lot of these things, I can't think of it off it. So sometimes when I have questions like this, I just have to go do it and see what I get. So let's say I change all the codes that are in for all the Terraform codes to the Terraform module codes, and I run the pipeline. If it fails, then I know, okay, I'm going to give my GitHub Actions permissions to the repo where the source is. I think it should be able to reference it since we are doing everything through Terraform, but I'm not sure. But it would work. You can do it either way. It will work. Okay. Does anyone else have any question?
Yeah, so my own question with the CI/CD is I was also looking at it and I opened the video too. And so when you were learning it or when you were practicing or when you were creating the projects, from your experience, do you think they follow the same methodology like for all the projects? For times, but I need to like create another project from scratch, not Resume, not Next App. So can I follow the same steps? Like, is it going to work for all the projects from your student?
For the CI/CD?
Yeah, for the CI/CD.
Yes,
the code that you use for the project. Okay,
yes,
the same thing, the same method and everything.
Yeah, so you want, yes, it will, because it was just like what we're talking about the Terraform modules here. If I need to create another project that is referencing my source, in you guys' case, it is the rent zone project is the same as the Nest project. So you're really not doing, in terms of the AWS infrastructure, the resources we will use to deploy each application is the same. So you don't have to worry much about, am I going to need all my source? So I can just copy this folder, rename it, then update my TF-VAS file. This is how I would do it. And I'm telling you guys, do it this way only after you understand what you are doing and you understand how to deploy this application. You can troubleshoot any issues you are facing and stuff like that. For me, it is more important that you understand what you are doing as opposed to figuring the workaround on getting it done. For me, it's not about getting it done. It's about getting it done, but understanding what you did. But I do agree that knowing how to copying your previous project and renaming it and knowing what to manipulate in it to deploy the next one proves that you understand what you are doing. So I do agree with that part, but I'm just saying that if you know there is knowledge gap and things you need to understand, I'd rather you focus on that knowledge gap and figuring that part out as opposed to completing the project and you still have knowledge gap that you have to fit in. So to answer your question, yes, either one will work. You can copy this one project, rename it, and manipulate what you need to manipulate, use it in the CI/CD, and it will work. Because both projects are the same. But at work, all your projects may not be the same. All your projects may not need the same resource. But either way, it's still very easy to manipulate a file, because even if I copied a project over and I said in this new project, I don't need security groups, RDS, all I have to do is just delete these modules from it and it will remove those resources. So does that make sense?
But it will still follow the same workflow in CI/CD, right?
Exactly. So you have remember that the CI/CD is only creating, the first part of the CI/CD is only creating our AWS infrastructure. So whatever is in your Terraform code, that's what it is going to create. Then when you deploy the other parts of it, the only other part of it that you have to make sure is that you are referencing the right Docker image and you are migrating the right SQL script into your RDS database. Yes, the process will be the same.
Thank you.
Aziz, quick question.
Yes. Yes, sir.
What shortcut do you use to comment out the script?
Okay. Yeah. So if you want to comment out any code, so I'm going to come here to this code, for example. If I want to comment out this code, I'm going to select if I want to comment out a whole block of code, yes, I'm just going to select everything like that. On Windows computer, it is control /
Control // Okay.
On Mac, it is command // So that's how I do it. And if you want to uncomment it, right, just select all the things you commented and press it again, control // and on Mac, it will be command // and that will uncomment it. I think there are other ways to either comment right? But this is the one I use, so I'm very used to this one. I'm sure, but there are other ways to comment as well.
Yeah, I think one way could be, I think you do a forward, a slash, and a asterisk at the first at line 47, and then end it with a slash and a asterisk at like
So a
59. I think that
slash,
should, and I think a star, yeah, and then no, and then line 59, you do an asterisk and a slash, I think, or the other, yeah.
yeah.
So you've
Okay.
commented out that whole block now.
Yeah. So
Yes.
you can also use this method that thank
Yes,
you for that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you can either use what I use, or you can use this. Just this works too. Yeah. I know I've seen this method, but I've never used it. I always just select everything and press Ctrl// to comment it. Okay. Cool. Thank you, Wahab. So does anyone else have any question?
I have a question. In the, I mean, maybe more of like a work environment question is, what would be the flow typically for updating Terraform modules and then updating the Terraform code? It's like the main TF of the code itself.
Okay.
So
at work, typically the Terraform code is in a different directory. At work, the Terraform module will be in a separate repository from the projects. So typically the Terraform modules don't get updated a lot unless if there is a major change in, sometimes Terraform updates their resources, and you would have to make that change in your code. And if that's the case, then all you have to do is clone. You will clone this Terraform modules repository on your computer, and you just make changes to any part of the code that you need to make change to. Then you push it, create your pull request, and it gets approved. And that's how that will be. Then for the project, you do the same thing. You just, everyone has a different way of applying it. So if you guys apply from local, you can create, clone the repository and do an apply on the project to pick up the modules, whatever changes you made in the module. Or sometimes they have a CI/CD pipeline that once you push your code to this Terraform modules repository, it will just update the project and do an apply for you.
Aziz?
Yeah.
So at work environment, are we allowed by any means to clone a repository to our local?
Yeah. Yeah, you that's the only way you work on it. You have to clone it to your computer. Yeah. So the thing about it is, and maybe in another session we can cover that. So the thing about it is, when you clone they have restriction on the repository. So don't worry about, I understand where your question is coming from. So don't worry about messing up anything in their repository, because when you clone the repository on your computer, this one this is a repository, right? But let's just use this as an example. Let's say I've cloned the repository on my computer. Yeah. Here you'll see the branch. It says main. Main will be the main branch. Main branch means the branch that your company is using currently, that everything works. Everything will be in the main branch. So when you clone the repository, you will clone that main branch on your computer, but they have restriction that you can't make changes on the main branch. So if you make any code changes and you try to update whatever is in their main branch in their GitHub repository, it's not going to work. So what you have to do is you have to create your own branch. So if you look here, and I can show you guys that if you want me, I did a demo on it before, but I'll do it. I can do it again if you want. Once you clone it on your computer, then you have to create a new branch. So here you can see create a new branch from main. Then in your branch is where you make your change. Once you make your change in your branch, you push the change back to GitHub. You create what is called a pull request. And the pull request just notifies people at your company, on your team, that you've made some changes that you want to merge into the main branch, and someone will review it. If everything looks good, they will approve it and it gets merged into main. So that's how that works. Does that make sense? I know I kind of, sometimes when I'm describing it, I'm not sure if you guys are able to follow, because I like drawing picture. So yeah,
So
but
Makes sense like this.
go ahead. Ahmed, go ahead.
okay, thank you. So if I get you correctly, so the main branch is the company's main branch that everything works.
Mhm.
And if I were to like make any changes, I will create my own separate branch.
Mhm.
And once that one is done, I will now make a pull request. And who in their code will now see if everything is okay. They will not allow a match to the main branch. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, correct.
Correct. Nice. Okay, that makes sense now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, Aziz, please, sorry for the question. So before you push back to the Git repo, right? So you create a pull request first.
No, when you push it back, then that's when we create a pull request. I can, let me show you guys a quick demo of what I mean. Now I have to find a repository that works. So. Okay. Let's say, let me check this repository. Okay. So in this repository, I have some Terraform code. So let's say they want you to make some change in this repository. Before you can clone a repository on your computer, you guys know that you have to set up your SSH keys and stuff like that. So I'm not going to start on setting up your SSH key, but let's assume you've already set that up. So you are, because when you start working, the first thing they will tell you to do is set up your SSH key. However, you need to clone, they will tell you that will be part of your onboarding thing. You would have to set those things up. So now you are working, they ask you to make a change in a Terraform code in this repository. So the first thing you are going to do, if you notice right now, this repository is on the dev branch. So let's say this is their main. Ahmed, it's not always called main. They may call it something else. So it's not always main, but whatever their branch is that works. So the first thing you do is clone it. I'm cloning through SSH. So I'm going to copy the SSH here. Then I'm going to then I'm going to copy. Then I'm going to go to my terminal. So where's my PowerShell? In my terminal, let me just do it on my downloads. So I'm going to see. So once I open my terminal, I'm going to clone that repository on my computer. So I'm going to type git clone. Once you type git clone, you paste the URL of that repository and press enter. It has now cloned that repository on my downloads directory. So if I go to my downloads directory here, the repository is there. So once you've cloned the repository, the next thing you have to do is go into that repository. The name of the repository is Nest App. So I'm going to cd into it, cd Nest App. So once you are now in the repository, you can check what branch you are on. So here, the command is git branch. So you can see the branch I'm on is dev. And that is the same branch I cloned, right? Then now, remember I said, don't start making your change in this branch because you won't be able to push it back because your company will most likely have other restriction there. So now I need to make a copy of this branch, which is creating my own branch so I can work on it. So everything you can do it in Visual Studio Code, right? Just like when I clone this when I clone this repository to open it in Visual Studio, Code, once you are in it, you can type code space dot and press enter. And that is going to open the repository for you in Visual Studio Code, right? When you open it, note that it is still saying dev. So whatever branch you are currently on, that's what you'll see here. So just like I wanted to do in the terminal, in Visual Studio Code, you can create a branch here by selecting this and select create a branch from dev, and it will create a branch for you. But I have a habit of just creating it from the terminal. I think you should learn how to do it both ways. My coworker, I was showing him something yesterday. He only creates it through Visual Studio Code, and I have a habit of just using the terminal, so that way I remember. So if I wanted to create my branch from this dev, the command is git, and you don't have to memorize all this stuff. When you use it a lot, you will just remember it. And if you don't remember, you are trying to do something, you don't remember how to do it, or you don't know how to do it, Google it or ask ChatGPT. So the command is git checkout space, then we add -b. -b means branch. Then we specify the name of the branch. I'll call the branch test. Let me call it my name. Let's see, it's test. So this is the command. Then once you type the command, press enter. And it has created the branch. And it has, when you create a branch, it will create the branch and also switch your current branch to that branch. That's what this means. So now if I type code, if I type git branch again, press enter, you can see now I have two branches, the dev and the one I just created. And the one I just created, whatever is green or whatever terminal you are using, it will be highlighted. So wherever you have this asterisk next to, that's the one you are currently on. So now if I go back to Visual Studio Code, remember to go back to Visual Studio Code is code space dot and press enter.
Oh yeah, Victoria, give your sisters food.
Sorry.
Brother.
So when I type code space dot, right? Let me do that again so you see. Code space dot. That will open it in Visual Studio Code. And in Visual Studio Code, now if you look here, you can see my branch is the one I created that I want to make my changes on. So once you've created your branch, now, so this here means like when you create a branch, you also have to, and we can cover this more in detail some other time. So once you create your branch, right, the icon you are seeing here is, you guys know that GitHub has this is the way I understand it, and it's just like I always try to make everything simple so I understand. So let me get rid of my pen. The GitHub you are seeing here in the GitHub account, that is called the remote repository. So this repository you are seeing here is the remote repository. So always remember that this is the remote repository. And the one I cloned on my computer that I'm currently accessing through Visual Studio Code, this is called your local repository. So I'm saying that to say so let's say this is your remote and this is your local, right? On this local, I just created a branch that I called Aziz test, right? I just say this is the name of the branch I just created. I'm using my mouse, so it's hard for me to write in there, right? What happens is when you create a branch on your local, let's call this local. When you create a branch on your local, it doesn't automatically show up in your remote. And I can show you that by, you can see in Visual Studio Code, when I type git branch, you can see in my local repository, it's showing me two branches. But if I come to my remote repository and I select this drop down on that branch, you can see the Aziz test that I just created there. So I'm saying that to say, where was I? I'm saying that to say that, let me erase this. Well, I don't, well, I shouldn't have erased that. Okay. So I'm saying that to say, I'm trying to work with this something. So I'm saying that to say that anything we do locally, we have to push it back to remote for it to be there. So since we create this branch locally, we have to make like a push to remote, then this branch will show up there. There's a command you can run in Visual Studio there's a command you can run in the terminal to push it. I think it's git push origin, then the name origin main. Or if you want to make it simple, once you create, I'm just going to clear this now. Once you've created the branch, to push it, you see this cloud icon here. This just means you can push the branch you just create to your remote repository. You can see if you hover over it, it says publish branch. So this will probably be the easiest way. So if you click this, it is going to publish it for you. And now if I go to my remote repository, I'm going to click refresh here. And if I select this drop down, you can now see it here. So that's how that works. So just to follow what we were doing, you've created your branch and you just make your change on your branch. So let's say on this branch, I'm just going to, so I don't mess with whatever I have in there. So I just say on this branch, I just created a file. I'll just create a file, test. .txt. Yes. So let's say you've cloned it, you made your branch and you are making all the changes you want to make there, which means I'm just creating a file here because I don't want to mess with my code. But you understand, let's say they told you to change something in RDS and you come here, maybe they want to change the engine version to a different engine version. You make those changes, right? Then you save your work. Once you save your work, you guys are already familiar with all your changes will be here. Then you can commit it. So you type a commit, the commit message is just anything, but it lets whoever is going to review your work know what you did on it. So here I'm just going to call it test. So, and I'm going to click commit. So it's asking me to save my file. I didn't save it. So it's going to save it and commit it for me. Then now I'm going to push it to my remote. Remember, everything you do locally, you have to push it to remote to see it there. So I have to create this file, commit it and push it. So now if I come to my remote repository and you can see it automatically. And this is how your GitHub account will work. Anytime you make a change and you go back to that repository, it is telling me that there's a branch here that I just created that I pushed to. Do I want to create a pull request for it? So at this point, I can just click compare and pull request. If I also refresh here, right, you can see in my main branch, in my dev branch, that file I created is still not there. So let's go back to that repo. So it's telling me the branch that I just created. Do I want to create a pull request? So I like just clicking it from here. Or if you select pull request here, you can also select it. Go to that option from here. So I click compare and pull request. So here it will put the commit the commit message that you entered here. So I just leave it on test and you type your description. Once you type your description, and one thing I want to mention here is here you can see it is saying that this is our branch, the branch we created, we made the changes on, and it wants to merge whatever changes you made on this branch into the dev branch. That's why you see the arrow is pointing this way. So here that is it. Once you type your message, I created this and that. So whoever is reviewing your work knows. And down here, it is showing you the files that got changed. So once you create all this, you click create pull request. It is going to create the pull request. So you can see now, when you create the pull request, it is saying that margin is blocked because it requires someone to approve it before you can merge it into main. So at this point, someone at your company that has permissions to approve will review your pull request. And just in case, if you are reviewing pull request, you can check here. I don't think since I created my own pull request, I don't think I can approve it. So here you can see the commit the person did, but most of the time you will spend your time on the file change. So here it will just show you, if I would have made a change to a file, it will show you what was there before and what it got changed to. Here I created a new file. So anything you see in green, that means that is what was added. Anything you see in red, that means that's what's removed. Since I didn't remove anything, I just created a new file. That's what you're seeing here. So once you're on this page, you can see review changes here, and you'll see this option to approve. But since I created my own pull request, I can't approve it. So the approve will be here. And once someone approves it, then you'll be able to merge it into main. So if someone, for my repositories, you guys can create a pull request to my repository just to see how it works, and I would have to approve it. So this is how it works, Amit. You can see that the repository, the dev one we cloned from, already has a restriction where you can't automatically push any updates to it. So you would have to make the changes on your own branch and create a pull request from your branch to get merged to the main branch. Does anyone have any question on that?
So yeah, it's just like pull request is doing two things now. It's like sending the message back to the Git remote repository and also notifying the reviewer that he should review this message, right?
No, the pull request is meant for someone to review whatever changes you made.
Yeah.
Right. So the process of pushing stuff back and forth is something you do in Git anyway. So any changes, when you clone a repository, any changes you made on your local repository, you have to push it back to your remote repository for you to see it there.
So when you push it back to the remote repository, how would the person get the notification that you just pushed something there?
They won't, because this branch that I created, let me go to it. This branch that I created, this is my own branch, right? You can push things into it like 1,000 times because you're always making one change, you test it. If it works, you push it. If it doesn't work, you may have to review it. So you are always pushing stuff back and forth, which is the commit. That's why on the pull request, when you are working on it, you are always pushing things back and forth. It's not just one time you make one simple change. This is just a simplified example, but there will be times where you're always updating numerous things, testing, revising it and pushing it back. So all the commit you make will show up here. So when you create your pull request, that is when whoever is approving it will be notified.
Yes.
Then when that person is notified, the person can come here on that conversation or commits, and they can see all the commits you made.
Okay.
All the commits will show up here.
Hello.
And anything you change in the file will also show up here.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think can you click on, if you go back one step from this page on that when we're having that pull request, maybe you can bypass all of that default branch protection rules, and let's see if the merge can go through. Maybe
wait,
I think
yeah,
you need to go back to pull request, something like that. It was saying something.
so I already created the pull request. I can't recreate it. So it's already
Oh, you
there.
merged it already? Okay.
No, I haven't merged it. So the pull request is here. So
Yes, so I was saying that they say merge without waiting for a requirement. So maybe you click on that box. It might let
okay.
us. I don't know. I was just saying.
Yeah, it will let me, but
Okay.
yeah, I think this will let me if I do that, but it's still showing red. But at your company, when someone approves it, all of this will go green. It will show green. Then you'll be able to click merge. Obviously, this one I'm checking here is just to bypass it. So, but at your company, you won't be able to bypass it. So you can see it's bypassing it here, branch protection. So, but I don't want to do this because this is not what you're going to be doing at work. The reason why I can't approve my own pull request, but the process is very simple. Once you create the pull request, you come to files change. Here, when you click this drop down, you review it, you can add your comments, and sometimes you will be reviewing someone else's pull request. You add your comments here, right? Then this option to approve it will be available. You just click it and click whatever is down here to approve. Then at that point, whoever created the pull request will get another notification saying someone has approved your work. Then they can come here. This merge pull request will be green, and you can just click merge it, and it will merge it to main for you.
So I think he asked another question that how will whosoever that is reviewing know? So I wanted to just add something like on the right where we have reviewers, there will be a list of people in there that can review. So that's how they know.
Exactly. So when in you guys company's GitHub repository, GitHub account for your team, there will be a list of reviewers that they've added that anytime someone creates a pull request, they will review it. They are usually your team lead or your manager or somebody like that. So you will see the list of their names here. So at the point that you create pull requests, they will get an email. But I also tell you guys a good practice is also, in addition to them getting the email, it is always a good practice to also follow up with them in like a Slack message. At my team, I know my lead. I always appreciate when I follow up with a Slack message saying, I just created this pull request. When you have at your earliest convenience, please review. So in addition to that, you may also have to follow up with who the reviewer is, because it's like if you have there are multiple people on your team and everyone is creating pull requests, at the same time. So whoever is approving it may be overwhelmed. But I'm just saying it is also a good practice to follow up in addition to the email. Yeah. So that is pretty much it about pull request. Do you guys have any questions on what we've covered so far? Okay. If you guys want us to do like a good workshop on it, maybe if you want to do one next week, and for then I would figure out how to set my my branch protection so that way I'll be able to. I know I've done it before where I was able to merge my own pull request, approve it, but I don't know what settings to pick in the settings, but I'll do it. I will do some tests. And if you guys want us to do a demo on it next week, we can do that. Okay. So let's work on what the question Ahmed asked last week for me to present a demo on how I come up with the Terraform resources, right? So the way I come up with the Terraform resources is very simple. Again, I'm always telling you guys, look at everything from the smallest point, not the biggest point. So what I mean is, don't look at, if I still have it open, right? don't look at Terraform as a whole like this. Or even when you are looking at the code, don't think of it as, oh man, how do I write all this stuff and bothering yourself. And it's like a good way to discourage yourself when you start looking at this, looking at it as a whole like this, especially when you're a beginner. I want you to look at it code by code. So this is one code block that does something. This is another code block that does something. You write it one code block at a time, and before you know it, you have a whole code block that does something for you in AWS. That is how you look at it. That is the first step. And the second step is, in order for you to start writing code in Terraform, I always tell you guys that you must understand how to create that resource in the management console. So if you want to create a VPC using Terraform, understand how to create a VPC in the management console. If you want to create an EC2 instance, the vice versa, understand how to create it in the management console first. That is very important. And for those of you that are, if you guys are watching this later on, if you are part of any class, if the class is teaching you Terraform right off the start, don't start there, because that's only going to discourage you, because you feel like you need to understand what EC2 is, how to configure it before you can know what type of things, resource type, and arguments to use in Terraform. So if I was learning AWS for the first time and someone started me on Terraform, I would just be discouraged. And I've been in class where we were working on creating VPC using Terraform, and people were asking things like, what is the route table? What is security groups? So it is very important that you understand the resource first before you start creating it in Terraform. So that is the first step. So what I mean by that is, here in this example, we're just going to use an EC2 instance. So before I start creating an EC2 instance with Terraform, first I have to know how to create it in the management console. So in my management console, and type EC2 here, click service. And this process that I'm using also applies to any, because trust me, AWS has so much service. Sometimes they want you to create, like the last time I created a proof of concept for like one AWS service that I haven't used before. I haven't configured it in the management console. And at that point, I didn't even know what that service is used for. So I did my research. The first thing I did is configured it in the management console. So here we are trying to configure EC2, right? We'll click launch instance. And here we would, when we are launching the EC2 instance, you can see some of the settings we have to enter to be able to create our EC2 instance. The first is the name. We'll call it test. Then the next one is the AMI used to launch the EC2 instance. We are using Amazon Linux 2023. The next option is instance type. We are using T2 Micro. And the next option is key pair. So here, if I have a key pair in my account, which I do, I'll select that one. The next option is network settings, right? Which here is where you select your VPC, right? We can select our VPC, the subnet we want to launch the EC2 instance in. Here, security group. So if you have a security group, so this is just a demo of how to create an EC2 instance. And storage, we usually leave this as default. And if you have anything under advanced settings you need to configure, you can do that. But here, this is just the basic settings you need to configure an EC2 instance. You can see the summary here. We need an AMI, the instance type, security group, and also like in what VPC and subnet. So once you've done that, you can click launch instance. I'm not sure. Yes, Olanike, go ahead. You can ask your question. I'm not sure if you still have the question. Sorry, I'm just seeing your message.
I do. Hi, well done. So
thank you.
I wanted to ask about the project I was working on your page. It's about building a dynamic website on AWS. So I did the first course, I got it right, and then I attempted the second one, and I set up my setup server and I used it to install all the applications. So after I did that, I restarted HTML and I went to copy the public IPv4 address to just see what it is. But I was getting a blank page.
Okay.
So I didn't know where I went wrong there.
Okay. The issue may have been maybe there could be a misconfiguration in your VPC. There could be a misconfiguration when you were installing your application. Maybe somehow your commands didn't execute as they should, or the issue can come from anywhere. So is it just a blank page, or does the page tell you something? Is it like a test page, or
It's just blank.
Okay, yeah, it just means that there's a misconfiguration somewhere. So in troubleshooting stuff like that, there isn't like a particular thing we can look at to tell that, oh, this is where stuff went wrong. We just have to kind of like backtrack. And first, we'll start by reviewing your VPC, making sure your security groups, everything is set up properly, and route tables. Then we would launch another EC2 instance, run the commands again to install your application, then test from there. So most likely something went wrong between creating your VPC and your network, or when you were actually installing the application on the EC2 instance.
Okay, you could be right with the EC2 thing, because right after I'm using a free tier account, right? So after I did that, I tried to launch another one and I noticed that I could not connect to the terminal. Okay. So do you think it's a thing whereby the whole free tier limit is gone and I should upgrade my account before I'm able to use it?
Oh, no. So whether even when you exhaust your free tier, AWS will just charge you appropriately for whatever you use. So when you launch your EC2 instance, depending on how long you keep it running, AWS will just charge you accordingly. So whatever EC2 you were getting in the free tier is the same one you are getting now that your free tier has been exhausted. So by misconfiguration, I'm suspecting it's just either when you were running the command, something went wrong somewhere, something didn't get executed. But I can help you troubleshoot it when you have time. I'm not sure when you have time today, I can help you troubleshoot it. So there isn't anything specific that I can tell you now, other than we can look at it together, then I'll show you where the issue may have come from.
Okay, we can try it anytime you have time today. Just let me know. Then lastly, before I go, I'm not able to upload files on my S3. The upload rate is about 4 kbs per second or so, and it tells me it's going to take like 2-3 days before it's done. That's why I had to ask you to help me do it. Is that something I need to check on my AWS homepage or something?
Oh no, so AWS, that just has to do with your internet speed. So, and how big the file you are trying to upload is, So if you have an internet speed that can handle more upload, with the time, you will upload it faster. So there is nothing you have to do in AWS to increase that. That just has to do with your internet speed.
Okay. All right, then.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just let me know when you have time.
Okay,
I'm available.
Thank you. Sure. No problem. All right. So here, so what I was mentioning is the first thing you have to do is learn how to launch. The first thing you have to do before you start creating a resource with Terraform is understand how to create that resource in AWS. So here I'm using an EC2 instance as an example. So I've launched an EC2 instance. So that's the first step. Then let's try to create, and one of the questions I had was how, when I look at your Terraform code, it is not the same thing as what I see in the documentation. So let's go to the Terraform documentation for creating an EC2 instance. So this is how search for the Terraform documentation for EC2, I just always type something descriptive. Create EC2 instance Terraform. So most of the time, it will just give you the documentation. That's one thing I like about the documentation. It is usually the first thing you see, even when you type a description. So this is the documentation. I'll select it, right? And here, you can see in Terraform documentation, they just give you a basic example. For every resource you are going to create, Terraform is just showing you how to configure your code to create that resource. But Terraform does not know what type of EC2 instance you are trying to create, if it is an Ubuntu, AMI, or if it's Amazon Linux too. So Terraform cannot put all the code in their the configuration in their documentation exactly how everyone wants it. So what Terraform is going to show you is just the basic of how to create an EC2 instance. So that's what you are seeing here. So here is just how to create an EC2 instance using AMI lookup. So here they are looking up Ubuntu AMI and they're using it to create their EC2 instance here. And here, how to create a spot instance and so on. So Terraform documentation is just the basic way of using it. But if you ask me how I learned Terraform, this is how I learned Terraform. When you are creating your resource, one thing about Terraform that you should understand is this. The first thing you should understand, let me open, going to open here. The first thing you should understand is, let me, I'll put this here so you can see. The first thing you should understand is what a resource type is. Right, so that's the first thing, but we're going to cover it. This is like the simplest way how I was able to learn Terraform. So the first thing is resource type. And anytime you are learning any type of coding thing in AWS or you are trying to do stuff, try to break it down into what a block of the code means and what you need. So the first one is resource type. The second one is reference name. Right. The third one is arguments. And the fourth one is attribute. To start learning Terraform, these are the 4 things you need for now. Then once you understand these 4 things, you can add other stuff to it as you go. These are not the only things in Terraform, but it is going to be easier for you to understand the other ones because you use them so often. I'm talking about variables and maybe any other things you need. Those ones, you use them so often that you remember. But to understand a Terraform code, this is the four things you must understand. So don't forget that. So the first one is resource type. I have my Terraform code open here, just a sample Terraform code. Resource type is, what are you trying to create? So that means, resource type means if you are trying to create a resource, an EC2 instance, that is the resource you are trying to create. VPC, that is the resource you are trying to create. S3, that is the resource. For the resource type, Terraform always provides this to you. So Terraform always provides this resource type to you. It does not change because this resource type is how you tell Terraform the type of resource you are trying to create. So if you look in the Terraform code example I have here, if I hover over this, you can see here, it is saying resource type and it is AWS VPC. So this means that it doesn't matter if you are trying to create 10 VPC, 1000 VPC. This AWS VPC is how you are going to tell Terraform the type of resource you are going to create. And here you just type it by typing resource you start with resource, and next to the resource, you have the AWS VPC. But if I want to create a VPC, I just go to the documentation the same way I just showed you. So let me use the EC2 instance, for example. So I'm just going to, since I'm working with EC2, I'm going to close this and I'm just going to use the EC2. Oh, okay, this is the EC2 one. So remember, regardless of the resource you are trying to create, you start with resource, then you tell Terraform the type of resource you are trying to create. This you don't make up, Terraform tells you what it would be. So based on the resource you are trying to create, you go to the Terraform documentation and you search for it here. I've searched for EC2. You can see here in this simple block, Terraform has the resource, AWS_instance. If I go to the next one where they are showing you how to create another EC2 instance, it's AWS_instance, and so on. So Terraform provides that to you. It does not change. And that is based on what type of resource you are trying to create. Every resource you are trying to create will have their own unique resource type. So that is the first thing you should remember. Then the next thing is reference name. So this is called the reference name. If I hover over it here, you can see it says reference name. Reference name, you create this. So this means that when you are creating this resource, remember this code block will create a resource in AWS, right? So you can give this resource a name within your code. So that is what you use the reference name for. And the reason, one of the reasons why the reference name is important is, let's say you want to create 2 EC2 instances and you have 2 code block here. Remember, the instance type will always be the same. The resource type, sorry, I said instance type. Remember, the resource type will always be the same because that is how you tell Terraform you are trying to create an EC2 instance. But the reference name has to be different. You can have, since you are trying to create 2 resources, you can't have the same reference name because this reference name is what you use to reference this code block within your code. So a good example is, let's say I created a resource up here, and I'll just give you an example. Let's say I created a resource up here, right? And this resource creates VPC. And you have to give it its own reference name. To name the reference name, what I always do is, whatever the resource type is, I just always copy this part of it. They won't let you put the AWS there, but just copy whatever is next to it and use it here. And you can change it to whatever, but try to make it as descriptive as what you are trying to create. So here, this is going to create a VPC. So I've given it my own reference name. The reason why the reference name is very important is because we use it to reference our code. We use it to reference a resource within our code. So let's say I want to create an EC2 instance now, for example, and this is just an example. I want to create an EC2 instance or security group. But because an EC2 instance allows you to specify VPC ID. But I don't want to get carried away from what I'm trying to explain here, but I'm just looking for a way to explain the reference name to you. Even though you create it yourself, I want to explain why it is important. So when you create the reference name, we will use it to reference that resource throughout our code. So let's say, for example, I created this VPC up here, and you guys know, in order for me I now want to launch my EC2 instance in the VPC. This is just an example. Let's say one of the arguments required is the ID of the VPC. So they will have something like this, VPC ID equals to, right? let's say this resource requires the ID of the VPC. How you will be able to tell your Terraform code where you want to get the ID of your VPC is by using the resource type and the reference name. So you copy those two, paste it here, and you remove this, press dot, add a period there, and add another period, and you type ID. So don't get carried away with what I'm showing you here. I'm just explaining to you that the reference name is how you can reference this resource throughout your Terraform code. It is not the name you will call the resource when you create it in the management console. It is just how you can reference the resource throughout your Terraform code. Do you guys have a question on that? I know I was kind of struggling on how to explain that to you guys, but I hope how I explained it made sense. Does anyone have any feedback on that? Okay, so that is what your reference name is. So you shouldn't forget that reference name, you create it and you can call it anything. So in this case, when I'm trying to create two EC2 instance, I can have the same reference name for it. I can call it EC2 instance 1 and I can call it EC2 instance 2. You can call it any name you want, but it is just a name that allows you to be able to identify it in your Terraform code. So that is it. And if you guys don't understand the reference, let me know. I will explain it to you in a way that will be clear. So that's the second thing you must remember, reference name. Then the third thing is arguments. All these things you are seeing here are arguments. And Ahmed, this is how my code is different from the Terraform code, because the arguments you will see here in my code are based on the configuration that are based on what I'm trying to configure for my EC2 instance. They won't be based on what is in the Terraform documentation. But another thing that I forgot to add is just how to interpret the Terraform documentation. So here, when you come to the Terraform documentation, Terraform will give you the basic code. I already explained that. Then you copy the Terraform code into your code, then you can modify it. The main thing that I'm explaining here is if you look here, you can see arguments and you can see attributes. So they are just below this documentation. And the fastest way to get there is if you click this, it will bring you to the argument sections. So this argument just means that when you are launching your EC2 instance, what settings do you want to pick for that EC2 instance? That is what we use argument for. So if I dock this, and we can just kind of do this the same way. Let me close this. I'm going to drag this down. I may have to just overlay it because a second. I'm trying to make it in a way where you can see it. Okay. Put this here. Okay, let's do it this way. I'm just going to have to click back and forth. So the argument is based on whatever settings you want to pick when you are launching that resource. So let's go to EC2 instance again, and I'll click launch instance. Then remember in the EC2 console, you are trying to create an EC2 instance. AWS is asking you to enter the name of the EC2 instance. What I'm telling you guys is this is how I learned Terraform. Whatever you see in the console that AWS is asking you, there will be an equivalent, there will be an argument for it in Terraform. So anything you pick here in Terraform, it is called argument. So here AWS says name. If you go to the Terraform documentation under arguments, right, we are on the arguments section, which are all the arguments you can list under the resource type, right? So let's look in here. If you scroll down here, these are in alphabetical order. So you have to probably go to N. And whatever the argument name is, Terraform has made it very similar to what it will be in the console. It is not always called the same thing, but it will be very close. So here, if I scroll down to, did I pass it? So here, there is no argument for name. And the reason why there's no argument for name is because if you look in the EC2 console, it is name and tags, right? So since anything you enter as name here is what AWS will use as tag. So in Terraform, we can just specify it as tag, and when we create it, it will create it as a name. So that's why you don't see the name here. This is the only time you will see that. For almost every setting you will pick, you will see the arguments here. So here for the EC2, the name is also the same as the tag. So if we scroll down here under arguments, let me go back to arguments again. Scroll down here. I go to the T section. You see tags, right? And that is why I have the argument tags here. And you can see the tag is also the name. So this is how I created the tag. So this tag represents what you would do when you enter a name here. So if I call this test in my code, I can also call this test, right? So in the console, the next thing we picked is the AMI, right? So I'm telling you, whatever you pick here, you have to go look for that argument in Terraform. So if you go to the Terraform documentation, you need the AMI, right? So if we go back to up here, they are in alphabetical order. So look for something similar to the name in the console. So they called it AMI. So you can see up here, AMI. The AMI to use for the instance. So they will just give you a brief description here. So that is why when you look here, we have the AMI. And if you are using Amazon Linux 2023 here, the AMI ID is here. So all I did is just copy this and put it here.
So Aziz, I have a question.
Yes.
So
Right.
in the block, you don't necessarily start with the tags, right? Because in the management console, you start with tags.
Yes, this is just for this particular resource. So this tag, you can specify it anywhere in your code. It doesn't matter.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I want to put it up here, I can do that as well. So when I was learning, this was actually how I did it. I was listing my arguments in the order that I was saying it in the console to just help me understand. But now I don't have to do it in the order, but I just understand whatever I'm saying here. I just need to have the argument for it here. Yeah. So the order you list them does not matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So one of the other challenge I had at the time was the IAM policy documents. I was going to create an IAM policy at the time, and I was like, okay, how do I even go about this? You know, I was pretending as if I didn't see your own code. And I went to the documentation. I didn't even know how to go about it, right? I saw some IAM role. I didn't see IAM policy document. It was entirely different for the IAM part of AWS to create. So I don't know, how did you come up with that script in your Terraform code?
All right, sure. So you guys understand this part. Well, let me just finish this real quick, then I would touch on the IAM one for you.
So, quick question, please.
Yes.
The EC2 instance name you put there, is it different from the tag name?
It's the same. In the EC2 console, whatever you call the name will also be the tag name. This is just for EC2. For other resources, you can have a name and the tags can be different. Okay. But for EC2, whatever you call the tag, that's what AWS called the EC2 and vice versa. Okay. Yeah, that's just for EC2 resource. So basically, you guys understand what I mean. What I'm saying is that when you are creating your EC2 instance and you keep going down this list, the next one is instance type, which is right here. That's why you see we have an argument for instance type. We pick T2 micro. That's why we are specifying T2 micro here. The next one is, and my arguments are not in order. The next one is key pair, right? You can see a key pair here. We have an argument in Terraform. The argument is called key name. Then you just specify the value. The next one is networking. This is where you specify the subnet and the VPC. But when you are creating it with Terraform, by specifying the subnet, Terraform already know what VPC you are trying to create in. So that's why they don't have an argument for VPC. So in Terraform, we only have to specify the ID of the subnet. So basically, that's the third thing I want you guys to remember, arguments. And that's that, right? So whatever, remember for the resource, if you don't know how to create it with Terraform, create it in the management console. And as you are picking your settings, whatever you see, that's what you list as argument in your Terraform code. Once you have created your resource, the same way I've created it here, your resource will have things like ID, things like, if we select it, yeah, your resource will have things like instance ID, ARN, public IPv4 address, host name type. In Terraform, these are called attributes. But I'm not going to I'm sure you guys understand it, but the attributes is, let's say I want to reference a particular resource. That's how we reference that particular resource in Terraform. We have to specify. Remember when I did the VPC up here? So if I want to reference the VPC in this resource, I will have to specify the resource type, the reference name, and the attribute of that resource that I want to reference. So you can see here in our code where we have the arguments. These arguments are referencing a particular attribute of that resource, which is the AMI. This will be the attribute. The instance type, T2 micro, will be the attribute. So when you create a resource, that resource will have attributes that you can reference throughout your Terraform code. So that's what attributes mean. And if you look in the Terraform documentation, for every resource you are creating, right, we are on the EC2. For every resource you are creating, those resources will have their own unique attributes. So you can see here when we come to the attribute reference, you can see when we create an EC2 instance, the EC2 instance will have attributes like ARN, instance state, and so on. And you can reference them. This was the simple way that I learned Terraform. So that is pretty much how to reference your Terraform code. This is how to create any resource in AWS. So once you understand this, you can pretty much create any resource in AWS with Terraform. So I meant to mention the other one you said. If you want to create an IAM role, and I know IAM role can be tricky, right? Let's just create a, was it IAM role you are trying to create or an IAM policy? Which one?
I think all the same, because so the funny thing is when I was doing my project on the rent zone, I had issue. I was thinking it was the policy document of the Terraform code that has issue. So I was trying to fix it. So at the time, I don't even know the difference. Why, like, there's a role, there's a policy document. I was confused. So I don't know the difference till now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So the same concept applies to IAM role. And let me cancel this. When you are creating an IAM role, let's go to IAM. When you are creating an IAM role, here you click create role. The first thing you specify is the trusted entity, which is the trusted entity type, which is the type of how you are trying to use it. Since we are creating one for a service, here we specify AWS service. Let's look for the Terraform documentation for IAM role. Okay, so when I come to the documentation, what I just always do is go straight to the examples, right? And in the example, you can see how, and I get what you are saying because Terraform has this way of doing it, but they also have, and I think they probably mention it here. So let me click on this one. So you can see here, sometimes you have to just read what they are saying here. So they are saying here, so here, if you look here, if policies are attached to a role via AWS IAM policy attachment resource, you are modifying the role name part. So in AWS, you can create, using Terraform, you can create an IAM role like this. So you can set resource type, role, the reference name, arguments, right? And here you can list, this is the service that is going to assume the policy. This is the service that's going to assume the role, which is equivalent to this part. Because when you select trusted entity type, right, that is how you tell Terraform what service is going to assume it. And you can see here on that service, it is saying EC2. If we want it to be ECS, it will say we will put whatever the ECS service thing is. Do you understand that part?
Correct.
Okay. So this is how you create an IAM role. So this is the basic example. So I can literally copy this and put it in my code. Right. Then the best way to do it is maybe if I open that ECS one, I can show you. So if you look at this code, it is. So that's why I'm saying Terraform allows you to specify it in different ways. You can either do it like this, create your IAM role and put this assume role policy here like this, or here they're also telling you that you can use the IAM policy attachment, right? Which allows you to do it this way, which allows you to do it the same way that I have it. Oh, let me close this. Which allows you to do it this way that I have it. So for every policy you are trying to create this, and then the first time I learned this, it was kind of complicated too. So just think about it this way. Anytime you are trying to create, and I'm saying that anytime you are trying to create a policy in AWS, just use policy document. That is how you create that policy. So this, when you are creating a resource, you can specify the policy under that resource, like I showed you in the IAM role, or you can create those documents separately. And how you do that is you just use the resource, this data source type, which is AWS IAM policy document. So I think that was where you were getting confused. So this also exists. There are two ways you can do it. You can specify it this way under the IAM role. I didn't do it this way. That's why you couldn't see it. I did it the other way, which is using the policy document. So Terraform lets you do it in those two ways. So here we are trying to specify the service that will assume the role. So this is the policy document to do that. And you can see here, they just created the IAM role. Then you attach it to the service that is the service that will assume this role, which is, if you look here, it is data. That's what you see here. AWS policy document. That is what you see here. Assume role. That is the reference name. And we just always put JSON at the end. So if you look in my Terraform code, I did the same exact thing. I specify my policy document. right? So I have multiple policy documents. So these are, but if you come down here, so if I want to organize it for you the same way they had it, this is my IAM role. So I'll bring this here and I'll put it here. So you can see I specify IAM role, my reference name, the name of the IAM role, and my policy document. My policy document is data, right? AWS policy document, assume role policy.json. Does that make sense?
Yes. So what I was saying initially was the one you just showed me, the very first one before you clicked on the web page. If you can go back to the documentation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
This
that was
one?
what exactly. So when with the one you showed us, the policy document one, that was where the confusion came. I was like, okay, how did you get to that policy document part?
I see. But you know, Terraform is always updating their documentation as they go. So sometimes but what they do tell you is when you reference the documentation, if there is an alternative way of creating it, they will specify it under the notes, which is what you are saying here.
Right. I never paid attention to the notes, sadly, but now I will.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if you see anything in my code that you can't see it in the basic example, you'll see it you'll see it under the notes. Like you will see reference to it under the note. So I learned this to the same way you learned it. That's exactly how I learned it. I created an IAM role at work, and I did it this way. I did it this way, and my coworker actually taught me to do it the other way. It's much easier to do it this other way. It just makes in my opinion, it makes your code looks much cleaner because you can specify all your policy documents. So here, this is another, if you want to create a policy, this is another policy. So this is much easier because then you don't have to put that JSON decoded thing, which sometimes I still always struggle with how to interpret that. So you don't have to list it like this, like how they have this JSON thing over here. So instead of embedding that JSON into your code, they just allow you to specify it in a resource block like this. So here, this is one policy. This is another policy, right? Then for each policy we just have the, we attach the documents to the policy, right? Then we can now attach the policy to the role. Does that make sense? So here, we created a policy document. Let me minimize this so maybe you can see it better. So here, we said that if you want to create a policy, just use this resource type. It's not resource, data source type, right? So this will create your policy, right? Then once you create your policy, another thing you have to understand is this is just the policy document. This means that what permissions do you want to specify in the policy? Then this is where you actually create the policy. So you create the policy here and you attach it to the document, which is this one. Then now that you have the policy, you can now attach this policy to the IAM role, which is what we are doing here. So you can see here, we specify the IAM role we want to attach it to, and the policy we want to attach to it.
Yeah, this is really amazing because I also wanted to create an inline policy, just like we did with the rent zone project, and only for me to see that this get bucket location and all this stuff is right under. If you can scroll up, let me see. Okay, yes, yeah, it's under this create policy document, our inline policy to get location. It's right under this policy document. I was like, okay, this is whole different. And I never saw documentation, which make me wonder how you went about it.
Yeah. So it's just that Terraform and in their documentation update, they just created this data source type that allows you to create your policy document without having to do that JSON decode thing that I showed you. So before you used to have to embed the JSON document of your policy in the code, but now they just allow you to specify in this code block that's much easier to read, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is.
So I always just lean on using this. And for these actions, really, how I always get it is if you want to know what the actions you need, for example, here we are trying to do S3 get object. So what I always do is I always just come, if I don't, most of the time, I don't know what the policy will look like. And I still always struggle with. And for you guys, don't try to write a policy by yourself unless if you know how to write it. Right? Unless if you know how to write one. But let's say you want to create a policy, you can come to here and click create policy, right? Reload that. Okay. Then under policy, it is going to tell you it's going to ask you what service wants to use it. So let's say we want to use it for EC2, right? Then what actions do you want to allow? So here you can say allow or deny. So you can either say deny or allow. We want to allow our EC2 instance to then under actions, right? We can list all these things. So this is policy that I'm creating. So this is for EC2. So whatever you want to allow, you just select it here. Maybe, yeah, so you will see everything here. I guess I should have done the one for the S3. So let me go back. I'll just do the role instead. So we'll create an IAM role. Then what service is going to use this IAM role? EC2. Then we'll scroll down here, click next. And the permissions that we want to, oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. I think it's the policy. That's what I wanted to do. Create policy. Okay, what I meant to do is when you're creating the policy, the policy is for S3. So we'll select S3 here. Then in our JSON thing, it is S3 get object. So once you select S3 under this different access level, you can, if you select the drop down, you can see the ones you want. So it's not there. If I look under read, and if this list is a lot, I just always do Control F and I'll type get. What is it? Get object. You can see get object is here. So all you have to do is check this box. Then if you need other permissions, you just check them. So let's say I need more permission, I'll just check all this. Then if you need anything on that right, you check it. And so on. Then here, it would ask you to specify for whatever you check, it would also ask you to specify the ARN of the S3 bucket because AWS don't want you to just give it access to everything in your bucket. So they want you to limit it to a specific bucket. So here, this way they're asking you to specify the ARN. So I can just, let me get out of here. I'm just going to open my S3 bucket. I'm going to copy any ARN of any S3 bucket. So I select this bucket, for example, and let me see the value. Yeah, ARN. So here, if you select under properties, you can see the ARN here. You can copy it. Then here, add ARNs. You can paste the ARN here and click add ARN. So it's saying I have to put this account and let me try any region and I'm just going to put it here. And well, not any region because my ARN, my bucket is in US East 1. So I'm just going to US East. Okay. I think it's jumping back on me. So I'll paste my A. Oh, okay, I'm doing it wrong. So this is the permission that I'm selecting. So here, for this one, I'm not really sure what this access granted instance is, because I was just picking random things. So I'm just going to do any for that. But this is the one that is relating to the S3 bucket. So that's the one. So here's just asking for the ARN. So that was why that was. So I'm just going to copy the ARN here and I'll paste it here and add ARN. And for this other one, I'm not necessarily sure what this permissions is doing, so I'm just going to pick anything. So the main thing I'm trying to show you is once you have select the type of, anytime you are creating a policy, you will know what you want because you will be able to come here and see it. And once you have selected, right, all I always do is I just come to JSON and it will give me the JSON thing here. So this, once you get the JSON under actions and all this resource, that is literally what you enter in your Terraform code. So you can see under actions, you just list whatever the JSON is. And for resource, you will, this one is saying all resource port. Let's say you want to limit it to specific resource, you will also copy everything you see on that resource here, and you'll put it in your Terraform code. So that's how I always create my policy. I still don't know how to write a full policy by myself, but that's why AWS has this tool that allows you to help you write a policy.
Aziz, you see this trick you just showed us. For me, in a million years, I've never known about this. So this is really helpful.
Yeah,
thank you.
You're welcome. So someone that I someone that I thought one of the person that I thought in the past, when he had an interview, this was actually one of the things he did. One of the questions they had for him, he said the guy had for him was for him to create an IAM policy. So he was like, how am I going to create it? He didn't tell the guy that, but he was thinking in his mind, but then he remembered that AWS has had this. So he came here and he was creating the policy here. And once he was almost done, the guy was like, okay, that's fine. I've seen enough. And he got the job. So look, one thing I want to stress is in AWS, you are always solving problem. Nobody wants you don't have to be a guru and know it all, but just know where to find answers and how to solve problems. So you can see here, if I'm sitting here trying to create an IAM, I may run into the type of errors that I was running into multiple times, but eventually I'll get to a point where I know I come to conclusion that this is the policy I'm trying to create. So that is how you guys should look at it. The main thing as a cloud engineer is you are always trying to solve problems. And you don't have to know it all, but just know how to solve problems and where to find the answers. That's it. So that's pretty much it for today. I know we are a little bit over time. Do you guys have any last minute questions before we go?
Aziz, you want to troubleshoot too, please.
Yes, we have to. I mean, the time is gone now. I don't know if you're going to fix another time for that. I don't know.
What I couldn't hear you. What did you say?
I said for troubleshooting, I don't know your plan for it because of the time. So, what?
What are you trying to troubleshoot?
Okay.
Who needs help troubleshooting and
I need help since last week.
Okay, can you share your screen and let me see what you need help with?
Okay. Are you okay? Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So what happened is that after I ran this this code, I wanted to what do they call it? The flyway. Flyway. I wanted to create the flyway. What do you call it? Flyway. Download the flyway. I downloaded it. Then I tried to create a file inside the. I mean, this. I. Okay, yeah. Red gates. So here I wanted to create a flyway.conf, but I could not do that. I don't know how to do it on the command line, like running the code on the command line on the
Okay.
EC2 instance.
You're trying to create it here, or you're trying to create it on the EC2 instance? Which one?
Either. I prefer the EC2 instance because this is.
So, well, those are all the things like you just have to be comfortable with. Like this one, if you want to, so what I recommend is anytime you are trying to create a file here, just open this folder in Visual Studio Code, then you can create your file in it.
I did that several times. It was saying that like permission. I could not do it.
Can you open Visual Studio Code? Open another Visual Studio Code. So right click on your Visual Studio Code icon and select new window.
Is this okay?
No, right click on it and select new window. So the icon down there, the Visual Studio Code icon, you see where you have all your apps, like at the bottom of your screen. Move your mouse to the right a little bit. Keep moving it. Keep moving it. Visual Studio Code icon. So no. So you see the first icon you see, not there, move it to here. The first icon, keep moving it slowly. Keep moving it to the left. I'm not sure. It is right here. It's the one that says this icon over here. I'm not sure how to. So you see all your icons down there where you have the Slack and all that stuff. Visual Studio Code, yeah. Right click on it and select new window. Then select file, open folder. Then go to the where you have your flyway stuff. So the flyway stuff you just showed me now, where was that? So this is it. Okay, double click on it and click on wherever that you flyway. Select it once. No, go back. Select that flyway folder just once. Then click select folder. All right, that's your conf directory. Right click on it and select new file and name your file. So the issue you are having is probably that's the select that drop down on that conf. So the issue you are having is your flyway is in your C drive and it won't let you just create stuff in there. So you have to move your flyway folder don't have to be in your C drive.
Okay.
So you don't have permissions to your C drive. So just use either downloads or
file
or use your home directory or something. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just has to do with some permissions issue on your
So if I want to do it through the command line, like running the code through the Bastion host server, how do I do?
So the best way to go to the management console. So does your Bastion host have access to your RDS?
Yeah,
so how are you using okay, I think I know this. So are you using EC2 instance connect endpoint or are you using just regular SSH key?
I created the SSH key. Yeah, the SSH key.
Okay. So if your EC2 instance is in the public subnet, it wouldn't have access to the EC2 instance in the private subnet. So you would have to create an EC2 instance in the private subnet to give it access to, let's just do it this way. Create an EC2 instance connect endpoint in your VPC. So go to VPC. All right. So and .0.0. Okay. So first create a security group in your dev VPC. If that whatever VPC you are using for this project, I'm assuming it's the dev VPC. Just call it Flyway Security Group. I mean, like EC2 instance endpoint security group. Just not Flyway, EC2 instance endpoint security group. And on the outbound, you no, not inbound, outbound. So delete the one for the inbound. For the outbound, you will have to delete that one you just created. You can edit the first one, and the traffic is going to be SSH. Delete that one, edit that one. That one is going to be SSH. And that's going to be from your VPC CIDR. So your VPC CIDR is 10.0.0 is 10.0.0.0/16.
Great.
Yeah. All right, now you can create your, click on endpoint. Give the endpoint a name. Select EC2 instance connect endpoint. Select your VPC. And select the security group we just created. And private subnet, any of your private subnet. And create. So now we need to modify your RDS instance. So go to your security groups. No, stay in this page and select your security groups. And select your database security group. Edit it. And allow it to allow traffic on port 22 from your EC2 instance endpoint security group. You didn't do your traffic, so you have to do your traffic. Your traffic is still on TCP. SSH. Okay, and scroll down and save row. Okay. So the next thing you need to do is now you can launch. We'll wait for your EC2 instance connect endpoint to be. Go back to your endpoint. It always takes time to launch it. So then now you can go and launch an EC2 instance in your private subnet. So when you launch this EC2 instance, proceed without a key pair, and make sure you also select the put it in your private edit and select your dev VPC, your private subnet. Anyone is fine. And we didn't even create a security group for it. No, that's not the one you use. Create a new security group. No, it's up there. Just check the first box, create a new security group. Then you can call it data migrate security group. Okay. And so yeah, that's fine. And under source, change it to well, I guess we can create it from here. Yeah, it won't let you click custom and let's see what we get. Select in that drop down, then scroll down and select your under security group, scroll down to the security group section and select your EC2 instance connect endpoint. Okay, then scroll down. Then under advanced, then add your S3 row to it.
Advanced detail.
Mm-hmm. Instance profile.
Instance.
IAM instance profile is the second one.
This one?
Yeah, whichever one you create. Yeah, I'm assuming that one. Yeah, select the S3 row. The one that says S3 row. I'm assuming that's the one. Yeah, select it. Then and launch your instance. Okay. So we need to modify that your RDS security group. So go to security groups. And data security group. And edit inbound. For the last one we add, remove that, click X on it. That shouldn't be the one we add. So click X on that. Yeah, right. Not that one. Oh, you know what? It's fine. Let's just add another one because I'm not sure which. Just add another one. It's fine. Then SSH, allow. Allow. No, not SSH. MySQL in Aurora. And 3306 from the EC2 instance data migrate security group, the one you just create. And you can create it, save it. So now everything should be set. So you can go to make sure your EC2 instance connector endpoint is up and running. So you are in EC2 here, you have to be in VPC. Okay, scroll to the right, you should see it. Okay, so now go to the EC2 console. Select your instance and click connect. No, so you just have to go back. But I guess you can click it from here too. So scroll down here. No, select the first tab, EC2 instance connect. Select connect using EC2 instance connect endpoint. Then select your endpoint over there.
This one.
Yeah. And click connect. Now you can run your script on this EC2 instance to migrate your data in the RDS.
So I don't have to use this one again anymore.
No. So the script we discussed, the one that I posted in Slack, you can run that script and you can run it here and it will migrate the data for you. That's not it. Scroll up. Keep scrolling up. That's not it. This is it, the one in the gray one. So you're not copying the whole script. The whole script is there. You're copying half of it.
Oh. Oh, by the way. Can I run it on the command line like this?
No, you have to run it one by one. So when you are learning, it's better to run it one by one. So that way, if anything fails, you know where it fails. So you have to first update your environment variables. So your S3 URI, your RDS endpoint, and all those information, you have to update it first.
I've not created.
You don't have the S3 bucket?
No, yet I've not got to that point.
I upload your script into it, your SQL script into that bucket. All right, so select your object and copy the URI of, select the file you just uploaded. The URI is there, the first one.
This one.
I think is, I don't know what it says. So can you go, I don't think it's that one. I think it's the URI. Not that one, right? So you see S3 URI up there. Yeah, that one.
What did, okay, this is HTML. Okay. Oh. That should be wrong. Let me go back.
No, it's right. So the one you copy, just delete what I have there. No, yeah, just put your, delete everything up to the equal sign. No, delete everything up to the equal sign before you paste it.
Yeah, okay.
No, delete everything you just have there now. And just delete everything to the equal sign. Then now paste. Now press backspace. Backspace. Paste what you copied there. Yeah. Then you need to enter your RDS endpoint. Your RDS database user database name and the username. Are you sure though that's
Yeah.
the information? Okay. All right. You can now run the environment variables. I'll be in your EC2 console. And now run the second command. All right, run the third one. Now run the next one.
Okay. How do you send points? Since I have to modify some things here.
No. So saying file with command not found. So did you copy it again and paste it in there? It should work, but copy it and paste it in there without so before you run it, remove the sudo, but it should work with the sudo, but go all the way back, press up. You should be able to go up. No, I think you already ran it for you. That's a second. Now press down. Press enter. I don't know why it's saying, did you run that other command, the one to, I can see that you, all right. So ls in there, type ls. cd into that flyway directory. I paste it in here, paste it in here and run it. I think there's something wrong with the way you, can you copy the command from Slack again and paste it in Visual Studio Code. Don't paste it in the, I think it's the way you paste it in that notepad may have messed with it. So no. All right. just maximize your Visual Studio Code or make it a little bit bigger so you can see the file. Then double click where your mouse was just at.
Yeah.
Up them. Okay. Now paste it in there. All right. Sometimes when you yeah, you can try running it this way. Let's see if that works. And if not, you may have to run what happened to your terminal?
Trying to.
No, your terminal is not active, so you can't paste it in there. So run the third command, go back to your Visual Studio Code and run the the command on line 16. Okay, it's there.
It's a system.
So now try running it. I'm not sure why yours is not, because it should work. So let me say something. I mean, it does work because I run it all the time and that's the command. So try launch another EC2 instance and we'll try again. But I'm not sure, maybe the command the first time you copied it, maybe. Let's see.
Do we use the same security group?
Yeah, here's the one you created before. That's not it. Call it data migrate something. And your S3 row. advanced details and select the S3 row. Oh, IAM. Okay. Once it's running, you can SSH into it. Right. So you have to run your environment variables from the other one, your other file, because that's where your
From here.
no, the other file where you updated it, or you can copy the there from there and paste it in here. All right. So I'm thinking for the flyway command, use this, open this, the flyway documentation and
You send it to me.
yeah, a second. I sent it in the group chat on Zoom. So open that documentation and let's use that one because the documentation is updated. So, but the command to the version doesn't really matter, but they may have depreciated that version. I don't know. So let's just use the latest one. So scroll down here. Just have to accept it or reject, click reject and see what happens.
Reject. Where is reject?
Right there, reject additional cookies. You have to accept their cookie settings before you can.
I didn't see anything like that.
So what page are you on now? Or is your screen frozen?
No, I'm on the Zoom meeting you sent.
No, I'm seeing your flyway documentation, but it's grayed out, like,
Oh,
right?
okay. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Accept. Okay. Which ones reject?
Anyone you want.
So the command is for Windows, firewall.
No, so scroll down. Under Linux, copy what you see there. Everything from wget without the yeah. Paste it in the terminal. Press enter. All right. Now run in your Visual Studio Code, not this one. So Visual Studio Code, you're going to run number 19. We already ran 13 and 16. So run 19. All right, ls, let me see. Okay, so now copy the next one. Press enter. But I think it has to do with something on your end because it should work.
On that fact.
Mm,
Do we have to remove the back
so,
the backslash?
oh no, the backslash is just it's saying the flyway sudo. So press paste that command again, but go copy the command from your terminal. Maybe AWS changed something. Copy it from your terminal again. No, not here. From your, from Visual Studio Code. So instead of copying the sudo, no, copy everything from the flyway without the sudo. Maybe I've changed it again, so paste it there. Press enter. There you go.
Error. Unable to detect.
So the error you are having is your password doesn't match. So either your RDS credentials is not the same.
Password. My password.
So go to your RDS, go to your RDS console. So either your flyway is running is just your RDS credentials you've specified is not the same. Yeah. So your application, copy your database name and copy your username and verify your username. But from looking at it, it looks right, but your RDS password is the only thing I can verify. So you have to make sure you are using the right RDS password.
Yeah, my username is right. L is capital.
So, and what about your endpoint?
My endpoint here.
Your RDS endpoint, is it
I
zero?
I copy it from that place. So
Okay.
let me copy it again.
So it most likely is your password because the command is running. So, and when you get that error, it is saying that it just can verify the credentials. So. Or is it a capital L?
No, it's small. I use capital for this. But let me use capital. So that's
Select everything, your environment variable, and run all your environment variable again. I think your terminal went out again. Click out from here. I'm not sure what's going on. Your terminal probably went out. Okay, there you go. I think it went out. So press enter. Yeah, it went out. I mean, you have a lot of tabs open. You probably have to close some of these tabs because that's part of the, yeah, this one is out too. So log back into your EC2 and then let's close that Cloud Shell thing. And click in here and press enter. Then run your flywheel command again.
Oh, that's flywheel command.
Yeah, that's the one, this one here. In your Visual Studio Code, yeah, that one. That's the one you are running. You're not running anything. No, not this one. You already installed Flyway on it, so you don't need to install it again. You're just migrating. So you're just running command on
This
number
one.
20. Yeah. Remove the sudo. Press enter. So you can see it was your password that was wrong.
Thank you.
So it has migrated your data for you. So that's it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I will handle the rest. Thanks.
No problem.
Hello, sir. Was it the pseudo the problem?
Yeah, so they may have changed it. AWS is always changing it. So before the sudo worked, now it seemed like it didn't work. But you can try it on your end because I just ran it last week, the sudo worked for me. So maybe it was
remember I said that was the error I was getting when I was running it. So I removed sudo, it didn't work, but I'll try it again and I'll try to download the latest one, just like you did today, to see if it's going to work.
Yeah. So I'll run it again today, and whatever works, I will update it. So is that the same issue you were having?
No. Mine is just CI/CD stuff.
Okay. Is it something that is very so one thing I want to, so with the troubleshooting, I want you guys to I'm trying to find the best way to assist you guys without having to tell you exactly what to do, because that is exactly how it's going to be at work. So when you are asking questions at work, you always want to ask questions along the line of, you already know what you are doing, but you're just saying, you're just asking it in a specific way. So that is how I want our troubleshooting session to be, where it is, that's the point of it, troubleshooting it together. And we are both bouncing ideas off each other to figure out what the issue is. As opposed to as opposed to me telling you everything that you have to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, I feel like I'm hurting your learning experience when I do that. So that's just what I want to say. But you can share your screen and I can help you look at it. I mean, hopefully it is it should be something straightforward.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that through too. So this was what I was having issues with. When I tried to, this is what I did. Just like you said, I want to explain what I've done, and maybe be able to like take it from there.
Okay.
So when I tried to run the job of configure AWS, so I found out that I was getting like lines on 22 to 24, right? There's a line under this access key and all these credentials. So so what I did was I was thinking maybe it's the extension of the GitHub stuff. So I went online. So I began to research ChatGPT. Also, we were pointing out at issues maybe from the GitHub or stuff like that. So I read some people said they had to disable the GitHub extension and they uninstall it, then they install it back. So I tried that. It's worked with when I did the configure AWS conditions. I pushed it, so that one worked well. So I began to encounter the problem when I was building my AWS infrastructure. So first of all, I noticed that the indentation also, like when I tried to copy the reference from the project itself, so it wasn't giving me the same indentation on the VS Code. So I had to like try to, meander my way through that, and I think I got that working. And by the time I got to the output here, all right, so it was giving me the same issues, telling me that you can see that, telling me that, okay, these things
All right.
still have some issues.
Yeah,
So,
okay. So first of all, those things you are saying, they are not errors.
yes.
It is just based on, so when you see those lines, don't worry about it. The main thing is make sure you paste the reference in your code the same way I have it in the GitHub repository.
Yes,
and now I've
yes.
explained to paste it and it will work. This reference, these lines you are seeing here is just based on whatever extension, YAML extension you've installed. So if you don't want to see those lines, you just have to remove them. This won't hurt your pipe. This won't affect your pipeline. This is just your extension trying to read your code and is saying there's an issue there. So go to your extension and let's see if you have like a YAML extension.
Yeah, I think I have one. I installed one. I remember.
Yeah, so you would have to remove that YAML extension.
Somewhere.
Because
yeah,
so you would have to remove that, then that should go away.
So is there any best way, I'm sorry, to like Terraform, for instance, when we run Terraform, what's going on? So I'm not installing an extension.
You may have to like quit. So click on that gear settings next to it and see, disable it, try disable. Okay,
Oh, it said this Kubernetes depends on this. Do you want to disable it?
Yeah.
I have to uninstall the Kubernetes for now.
You already disabled it, so go back to your code and let's see.
Okay.
Oh no, just click on the Explorer over there.
Oh.
You may have to probably close Visual Studio Code and start over. Okay. So I think it's saying, there you go. So it's the extension. So when you see those line on it, it doesn't mean it is failing.
It doesn't mean.
It just means the extension there's no YAML extension that I've found that works very well. I think it came back again.
Okay.
So you might have to just delete it under completely. It said the Kubernetes one is relating to it, so you might have to delete that one and delete this one. So there's no extension that I found that really works better with YAML, because YAML configuration can come, like the code can come in different types. And I think for some, when you're having like environment variables like this, it just doesn't know how to interpret it very well. Terraform works because that is an extension that is specifically meant for Terraform. So it's able to read all your Terraform code. But YAML is kind of like a little bit broader. So
yes, sir. So, and for Terraform, if I do like Terraform format FMT, it can format all my stuff and arrange it perfectly. So when I copied the reference here, I noticed that the indentation didn't work. So I had to, like, one after the other, like arrange them, which I know took some time. But is there any way, like generally, when you just if I do like Command A, I light everything, then I just do. I thought Tab was going to fix everything.
It is the way you are pasting it. You have to, wherever your mouse is, you have to pay attention to wherever your mouse is. So wherever your mouse is, if you paste it there, the indentations will start from wherever your mouse is. So pay attention to my video when I'm saying, like, when you are pasting it, make sure. Just a second.
That's good. Congratulations.
So pay attention to when you are indenting it, where I said to indent it. So let me show you exactly. So let's scroll up, right? Scroll up in your code. So move your stuff to the, okay. So I'm not, so you said you ran the job, scroll up. No, you're scrolling down, scroll up, all the way up.
Scroll up, okay.
So you said you ran your job on configure. Okay. So you run that one works, right?
It worked perfectly.
So you can see all the jobs. So the way I go into my repository where I copy the code, where I have that reference file for the build AWS infrastructure. All right. So you can see I've already included the indented. So you just have to copy the raw, right? Click the box to copy raw file. Then go to your code.
Open this one.
And no, scroll down in your code. We can remove it. Scroll all the way to the bottom. All right, add a new line. So make sure your mouse is all the way in the beginning. Your cursor is all the way in the beginning. Is that the beginning? Yeah. Press backspace one more time. Okay, then paste it there. So the indentation will be where it needs to be. So if you put your mouse there and just scroll up, yes, like that. So leave your mouse there and just keep scrolling up. You'll see the line up. In YAML, that's very important. Your indentation have to line up. So you can see your indentations don't line up, starting from like your job, despite from the way you were pasting it. So there has to be consistency between, because the job is that property, and everything else, configure credentials, deploy AWS infrastructure, should fall right under that. And if your indentation is off, that would also affect your pipeline from working. So that's one of the tricky thing about YAML that you have to pay attention to. So I would say probably just go back to copying everything. So you can see where that indentation is. That's where it should be.
Okay, so this one aligns, right? You want to just copy it. Think it aligns.
Yeah, because I've already accounted for the indentation in the reference file. You just have to copy it and paste it in yours. So Let me, just to be sure, let me check my code.
Probably I'm saying something like, because I see that the deploy is here. And, yeah. Yeah, this is where the deploy is supposed to be. Supposed to be on this line.
So in my code, those are just one indent away. The jobs are one indentation away from the left side. They are
From
not
the-
2, 3. So it looks exactly how I told you to paste it on line 147.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so
That's
for all,
check.
yeah. So that indentation on 147 is right. So you have to just go back to the beginning and just repaste those code. So that way your indentations is right. So you have to do it all the way from the beginning, because I think your indentation is wrong from the beginning. From
the beginning?
Yeah, from line 3.
Oh,
Yeah, from
okay,
line
so
3,
used to
that
go
is
like
wrong.
this.
Yeah, so your indentation is wrong. And look at my code when you are watching the video. Look at my code, see where my indentation is, and compare it to yours. You'll see. All right, so you won't see it in here because they don't show you the lines in Visual Studio, but when you paste it, look at when I paste mine and look at when you paste yours, and you'll see. You'll see. Your indentation has to just be consistent. That's all.
Oh, okay, sorry.
All right.
I've seen the big thing. Thank you so much.
No problem. All right, cool. Well, that's pretty much it for today. I would, if you guys have any other thing you want me to know, I would try that flyaway command and see if you need it with the sudo, or if you don't. And if you don't, then I'll just I'll update that command. So it used to work with the sudo, so I'm not sure if they've updated something. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you guys.
Can we have this video for today?
Yes, it's on. It'll be on YouTube, so you'll be able to see it there.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. All right, thank you everyone. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aziz.
No problem. Bye.